Welcome to the Encore Audio Archives YouTube channel. I'm Taper Dave, and this is my channel. I've uploaded hundreds of talks here that I've recorded at meetings in West LA, and I've also recorded conventions starting in 2013. I've got a bunch of those up. And Walt and Mary Murray, the original owners of Encore Audio Archives, started the company in the 80s, and Walt recorded Joe and Charlie's and a bunch of stuff down in Vista, California. My sobriety date is June 20th of 1994. I hope you find something you like, so please like and subscribe to my channel and comment down below. If you want to hear something that I don't have or that you don't see, I'll see that I get it. Anyways, take care and have a great day if you want to.
I like to start my pitch just by giving you some of the vital statistics. Get that all out of the way at the beginning, and that way I can let the pitch go wherever it wants, and I don't have to think about how to work this or that element into it. And then you don't have to sit there and guess or calculate or whatever, try to figure out who I might be or where I came from. So I usually start by saying that I started to drink when I was 17. I drank for 16 years, and I've been sober for 25. I just celebrated my 25th birthday about 2 weeks ago. Let's see what else. I've been married twice and divorced twice, once while drinking and once in sobriety, and I'm now single and free. I worked as a professor at UCLA for 26 years, and 2 years ago I retired. And so now I'm a gentleman of leisure and figuring out what I'm going to do for the second half of my life. That's literally true. I'm actually, would you believe, I'm actually enrolled in an extension course at UCLA with the title, A Conscious Journey into the Second Half of Life. So what else would a professor do except go back to school to figure out? What I'm learning so far is I'm really grateful to be a member of Alcoholics Anonymous. Some of those folks are heading into the second half of their life without a clue. And having a support group is just an incredible advantage. So for that alone, now that I'm 25 years sober, I can say I'm grateful to be an alcoholic. Not just to be a sober alcoholic, but to be an alcoholic. Earlier in my life, it did not seem so wonderful. Coming to Playa del Rey brings back some memories. I lived at Playa del Rey 2 different times. Once back in 1959, I lived down on Trolley Way, right down on the beach. And right then I was just perfecting my drinking style. And then I lived down on Pershing Drive from 68 to 72. And the first part of that, I was rapidly finding my bottom. And then the latter part of it, I was getting sober. So it brings back some memories just to come down here. I was born in Denver, and I was an only child. And I usually summarize my childhood by saying that I felt lonely, separate, different, and afraid. I just did not seem to have the knack of relating well to the other kids, and I seemed to prefer to be alone. When I started school, there were some circumstances that conspired to contribute to that. I had been born with a slight curvature of the spine, not enough to really interfere with my physical movement in ordinary life, but enough to mess me up as far as sports were concerned, because I was always totally uncoordinated. And growing up in Denver in the 40s and 50s, if you weren't into sports, you were zero. And so that really kind of cut me out of the social swim as far as the guys were concerned, and I was too inept and emotionally immature to really connect with the ladies. And that doesn't leave much else. You know. So I used to spend a lot of time alone. By the time I was 12 years old, I kind of formulated an idea. I said, well, I know what I'm going to have to be when I grow up in order to make it in this world. I'm going to be a nerd. Because the only thing I was good at, it seemed like, was I got good grades at school, and I enjoyed working in the basement on electronic stuff. I used to, at that day, in those days, electronics was human sized. It wasn't, they didn't have everything shrunk down to the, microscopic size, the whole computer on your thumbnail. In those days, you could get in there with a soldering iron and pliers and do something. And so that's what I was doing after school. I'd be down in the cellar, tinkering around with all this electronics equipment. And I decided, well, when I grow up, I'm going to have to find some kind of a job doing this so I can be in a back laboratory or some big industrial concern. And they'll pay me to do this kind of stuff. And every 3 weeks or so, I'll come out and pick up my paycheck, go to the bank, and get right back into the laboratory. And that kind of dreary existence was about all I thought life had to offer. I was kind of resigned to that. I was fortunate enough to get a scholarship to an engineering school on the East Coast, and so I got out of Denver and went off to the East Coast. And that's where I learned how to be a functioning drunk. I decided I should go to some parties because my high school counselor had warned me. He said, well, you can't, don't just go there and study. He said, you've got to have some extracurricular activities on your record, or when you graduate, nobody's even going to want to hire you. So on my high school counselor's orders, I went to a party. And since I had decided that my brain was the only thing that was going to get me through life, and I wasn't really clear in my own mind whether I was going to drink or not while I was in college. I kind of thought, maybe I don't want to do that because I'm endangering my survival kit. But when I was offered a glass of beer, I thought, well, if I turn this down and one more time, I'm going to be out of it, standing against the wall watching everyone else party. And so my counselor says I got to get in and learn how to socialize. That's the last glass of beer I debated about for 16 years. I drank that down, and Shazam, boom, Captain Marvel. This miraculous transition took place, and suddenly I discovered that I could make a conversation. I could participate in the conversation and make sense. My problem previously had been I would try to get into a conversation, and by the time I finally thought of something that seemed appropriate to say, the topic had already changed. Now I could come in right on the beat, and this newfound power, I didn't know where it came from. And then I could talk to the ladies and dance. And so I thought I had found the elixir that was going to make it possible for me to have a little bit more than that dreary existence. And indeed, it was. That is exactly what it was. I look back on the progression of my drinking, and I see that for the first 6 months, I was going to parties in order to socialize and have fun, and booze was just the instrument that enabled me to do that. It was like it was the key that opened the cage and let me out, and I could go to a party and have fun. So for the first 6 months, the reason for going to the party was to socialize. And then I noticed that change in attitude occurred. And after that, the reason for going to the party was to drink, and the socializing was an excuse. So instead of drinking being an instrument that would enable me to socialize, the socializing became an instrument that would enable me to drink. And of course, I wasn't aware of that at the time, but now it's real evident. I like to say that I think there are 3 invisible lines that most alcoholics cross over in becoming full-blown alcoholics. Some of us spend years as social drinkers and then gradually wind up alcoholics. I don't relate to that. I think I was an alcoholic right from the beginning. But in any event, I think the first line is when you stop using alcohol as a beverage and start using it as a medicine. And that was right from the beginning. That was the way I was using it. I used it to fix me. The second invisible line is when you lose control. Well, the clearest example for me of losing control is having blackouts. Now, for the newcomers, in case you haven't heard it already, a blackout doesn't mean passing out. A blackout means I'm having an out-of-the-body experience. It means that I've gone off somewhere on the astral plane and this other demon has come in and taken over my body. And he does the most horrible things, gets into the worst predicaments, and then just when things are at the bottom, he goes out, I come back in and take the ball. That's a blackout. So when that's happening, obviously I'm out of control. I mean, I don't even know where I was, I should. But the demon who was in here in the meantime sure did drink a lot, I'll say that. The third invisible line is when you do damage. And it was about after. Well, I was having blackouts between a year and 2 years after I first started to drink. And after 3 years, I was involved in an automobile accident. So there's the damage. So it didn't take me long. The first invisible line, right from the beginning. The second one within a year or two, and the third one within 3 years. But I had a lot more drinking left, you know. So I was a functioning drunk, and I was given the secret of being a functioning drunk at this school because it was an engineering school, and most of the people that were very serious about graduating was not a party school. They were serious about their drinking too. And so what they told me was, don't drink during the week. Whatever you're doing, do it with your full attention. When you're studying, do that with your full attention. When you're drinking, do that with your full attention. So don't drink at all during the week, and then when Friday afternoon rolls around, anybody who works as hard as we do is entitled to unwind. At that time, because of the age problem, I didn't do much bar drinking. I did all my drinking in parties. And so it was kind of situation where I could drink as much as I wanted and nobody said anything. It was not considered socially inappropriate to be passed out drunk or, you know, just sloppy, whatever. So I never attempted to do any social drinking. And that was my conception of drinking. Either I don't drink at all, or else whenever I start drinking, I can drink as much as I want. And there never was any comment about that. So I never noticed any social drinkers. They must have been around. But I thought everybody drank the way I drank. It never occurred to me there was anything peculiar about it. In fact, I never really studied social drinkers until I got sober in Alcoholics Anonymous. And then I realized that about 90% of the population actually doesn't drink that way. They take 1 or 2 drinks, and they've had enough. I don't understand it at all. They actually exhibit indifference to alcohol. They'll drink half of a drink and wander off and leave it and forget where it was. I know where it was. But they don't. So I've come to the conclusion that it's a waste of booze to give it to the only people who can drink it successfully. It doesn't do for them what it does for us. Well, anyway, with my formula of combining 2 obsessions, if you have, I think that's the secret of any obsession. If you don't want it to really run you into the ground in a short time, find another obsession and play one off against the other. So that way, kind of maintain a balance in your life. I still do that sober. I call it the learning to drive in a tunnel theory. If you try to find where the middle of the tunnel, suppose that I'm driving through a tunnel and my headlights don't work. I'm trying to find where the middle of the tunnel is. So I sort of go off at an angle and crash into the wall on one side. Then I make a 90-degree turn and go over and crash into the wall on the other side. And sort of tack my way through the tunnel. And that's my concept of balance, you see. That's as close as I can come to the middle of the road. So it was like that with working and drinking, the same thing. You know, somehow it got me through, managed to graduate, and after I finished, I came to California and went to work in the aerospace industry. And this was in the late 50s, and the Soviets had put their little grapefruit into orbit, and we were all worked up about Sputnik, and we had to play catch up, and we were going to go to the moon and all this stuff. So it was really exciting time. I loved it, because it was like space was the new frontier, and it was in the field I wanted. I designed autopilots for ballistic missiles. That's what I did. I can design a rocket to the moon, but I had trouble picking up the laundry. Anyway, I found a bunch of people who worked and drank the same way I did. Sometimes we had a 6-day week because we had some overtime. And we loved what we were doing, so it was easy to be obsessed with that. And then when Friday afternoon or Saturday afternoon came, we quit and we said, well, we're entitled to unwind. Anybody who works as hard as we do gets to unwind. So then we loved to drink. We loved to work and we loved to drink, and it seemed to be a terrific life. And that was when I was living on the beach down on Trolley Way, and it seemed wonderful. As long as I was in motion, as long as I was doing something, working or drinking or partying or whatever. After a year or so, I got married and moved down to Palos Verdes Peninsula. And I had a little red sports car, and I thought, I've got everything I want. I've got a job that I wanted, and I married exactly the woman that I wanted to marry, and I was living in the area that I wanted to live in. I've got this little red sports car. Now, how did I feel if I wasn't working, and I wasn't drinking, and I wasn't engaged in some activity? I just kind of stopped for a while and took stock of where I was. How did I feel? Restless, irritable, and discontent. Huh. How about that? I've got everything I want. I'm not satisfied. I'm not fulfilled. I feel restless, irritable, and discontent. And I'm craving for something, and I'm not quite sure what it is. Alcoholics are people who want more out of life than there seems to be in it. At least whatever it is that we're looking for, we can't seem to find it. And see that, it's important for me to go back and look at that. That's the mental obsession right there. Not for booze per se, but for that ethereal, abstract something that's going to fulfill me and make it all okay. That's what the mental obsession is really for. The physical allergy is the thing that compels me to go on drinking once I've had a couple of drinks. Now, as I explained, I very rarely would be in a situation where I had to do any controlled drinking. I sort of had radar that would avoid any kind of a situation like that. I didn't realize that at the time, but I can look back and see. Once in a while, my wife and I might get invited over to the couple's house that we didn't know very well. And I wouldn't take precaution to have a bottle of booze hidden in a car somewhere. And so we'd go in, they'd give us a couple of cocktails before dinner, and then we'd go to dinner. And that's it. No wine with the dinner, no brandy after, that's it. And along about 9:30, you get the realization, oh. There may be another hour or two left in this evening, and there's no more booze. Oh my God. Another time when I noticed that there was something peculiar would be at work. Occasionally the whole group would go out to lunch. A manager would be transferred, or the secretary would be leaving to get married, or they have a baby, or there'd be somebody coming into the group or somebody leaving the group. And the whole group would go out to lunch. We'd go to some fancy restaurant. And at that time, everybody might have a drink before lunch. And I would do that too. And the rest of them would go back to work. And I remember this, that a lot of the people, I saw them, you know, about 2 o'clock in the afternoon, they're back at work, going about their day. Not me. There are a few of us who felt the same way. We'd suddenly remember we had an important appointment, we had to go out to the bank or whatever, and we'd find an excuse to take off the rest of the afternoon and get out of there, go to a bar. If I tried to stay at work, what would happen? Well, it was very difficult, as I remember. I'd be sort of having a miniature nervous breakdown. And my palms would be sort of sweaty, and my gut would sort of get in a knot, and I'd have a little throbbing in my temples. I really would wish I could have another drink. But here I am, I've got this important job, I'm going to try to do it. If I drank enough coffee and smoked enough cigarettes, you know, along about 3 o'clock, I'd get everything in gear, finally. But it was a major effort. And so what I noticed, now I didn't realize what it meant at the time, but in inventorying the progression of my alcoholism after I got sober, and I went back, and this is a key thing that I noticed, which was, if I knew in advance that there's a situation where I can only have 1 or 2 drinks, and then that's it, I would choose not to drink at all. That's the physical allergy. That's it. If you relate to that, we got you. You're dead. That's the physical allergy. Now, I can give you a long technical talk about how the body metabolizes alcohol and converts it to acetylcholine, and there's a pretty good explanation for why that happens. The point is that it does happen, and medical science now recognizes it, and there is a difference between alcoholics and normal people. And that's it. A normal person can have a couple of drinks, and after an hour later, they're indifferent. They might as well have had 7-Up. They've forgotten all about it. We haven't. See? That's the physical allergy. That means that once I start to drink, that mechanism compels me to go on drinking until I've passed out. Because if at that point that I was describing, where I'm having all those uncomfortable physical symptoms, if I drink some more alcohol, that temporarily alleviates it. And I get a little grace period. Only the grace period isn't as long as it was earlier, and pretty soon I'm on this treadmill. It's like borrowing more money just to pay the interest on the debts I already have, you know. And I'll just have to take on more alcohol just to keep demons away, and pretty soon there I am in a blackout or passed out or whatever, one more time. So once I begin to drink, then that's when the physical allergy kicks in. And as the big book points out, well, simple. Just accept a life of total abstinence and there's no more problem. Why don't I respond well to that suggestion? Because we're back to restless, irritable, and discontent. That's why. That's why. I heard Father Terry share a couple of weeks ago, and he said something that he put this idea in a way that I really like, and so I'm quoting it. I'll say it 3 or 4 times and give him the credit. After that, I'll just say it without giving the credit for it. But he was talking about God's will, and he said, well, there's a lot of time. He's a Catholic priest, and he's been sober for over 25 years. And this isn't even Father Terry, it's Monsignor Terry now. So if we should have a resident expert on God's will, it should be him. And he says a lot of times he doesn't know, but there's one thing he knows for sure, that it was God's will for him to be sober. And he says that really can illustrate in his mind a very big point. He says because before he got sober, getting sober did not seem like a good idea. It did not seem like a good idea. He says, but now that he's been sober, what he considers is the biggest gift that he's got by the grace of God is to prefer sobriety to being stoned. He prefers to be sober to be loaded. The book makes a big point of that if the program is working properly, it says, if tempted, we recoil as if from a hot flame. We're not fighting booze or even staying on guard. That's the miracle of it. That's how we react as long as we stay in fit spiritual condition. And absolutely, I'm convinced of that. It's some power greater than human that makes that possible. Because I agree with Terry. I prefer being sober. But there's no way I could know that before I got sober, because the state that I'm in now was something I had never experienced during my drinking. There's no way I could choose to do this because I didn't know what I was choosing. It was something I never experienced. So that's why the book says in chapter 2, it does not seem like a good idea to get sober. If I was allergic to strawberries, and every time I ate strawberries I would break out in horrible warts, I would just stop eating strawberries. Huh? So why don't I just stop drinking? Because that craving, phenomenon of craving, not for the booze per se, but the consolation for all the frustrations I've had up to now, or the sense that maybe whatever this thing is, this ethereal thing that I'm craving, somehow it seems possible that I might find it just tonight or tomorrow or just around the corner. It's clear to me that there's only 2 reasons why I ever drank: success and failure. And actually, the 12 and 12 says that. It says that if we failed, even in part, we drank for oblivion. And I did that. If I was frustrated, if I had to make a presentation and I screwed it up and felt a little humiliated, not a major catastrophe, understand, it didn't live up to my expectations. After it was over, I would go drink, not just a couple of drinks to take the edge off. No, I just wanted to wipe out my head and forget the whole thing. I'll think about it tomorrow. Tonight, I just want to wipe my head out. Drink for oblivion, even a small frustration. That's the way I drank. On the other hand, suppose it goes well. Now what? Well, I'm out there drinking, not to celebrate the fact that it went well, but to project, well, if I could do that, then I could maybe da-da-da-da-da-da. And it says when we succeeded, we drank to dream still greater dreams. What's the point? The point is that no achievement in itself is enough. I don't achieve something and say, wow, that's terrific. I'll just stay on this plateau and enjoy this achievement indefinitely. No. Restless, irritable, and discontent. So that's where I was down there at Palos Verdes, and I thought, well, how to fix it? And I looked around the company I was working for, TRW, and I said, oh, a lot of these executives have PhD degrees. That'll fix it. So I had to decide what to do is go back to college and get myself a PhD. And My wife was working as a junior high school teacher, and after we had been working several years, we both quit our jobs. And off we went, and I started going to graduate school. 4 years to get through, and it became, I had set this goal, and by God, I was going to achieve it, no matter what. So no matter what happened along the way, I was determined to finish graduate school. Well, a lot happened. First, my mother died. Then later, my father committed suicide. And sometime after that, I went through a divorce. And as my wife was leaving, she said, I watched you go through the death of your parents, and you didn't really react to that. I haven't seen any grief. And you're just, all you do is you go to school all week long. Friday afternoon, you go straight to the liquor store. You get a half gallon of white port, and I was, why drink anything expensive? 11, up in Northern California, the cheapest booze I could find was 11 Cellars white port. So I come back, park in front of the TV set, and unwind. And she said, that's what you do every Friday night. We said, we used to go out. We used to have a date night. Now all you do is you wipe out for the weekend. Sunday afternoon, you get ready to go back to school. She says, and I never see you expressing any feelings. You're just an automaton. So she said, it's like waiting for a time bomb. You're ticking away, and one of these days you're going to explode. And I don't want to be around when that happens. So goodbye. And, all right, goodbye. And I could continue on my way. The state of mind I was in, when I used to watch on television, they had all-night horror movies. They had the Dracula, and they had Frankenstein, and I would watch the horror movies and cheer for the monsters. And then I would usually pass out in front of the tube and come to the next morning, and there'd be the little kiddie movies. There'd be the coyote chasing the roadrunner. And I'd be all confused. I said, how did Dracula get changed into the roadrunner? I burned up a lot of TV dinners, too. Because I would come on Friday evening, I'd go to the liquor store, I'd get the jug of wine and a TV dinner, go in the kitchen, turn on the oven, put the TV dinner in the oven, sit down in front of the tube, and about 2 o'clock, I realized the place is full of smoke. I'd go out in the kitchen, turn off the oven, throw away the charred remains, get back in front of the tube. So it's really living, isn't it? It's fun to be a drunk. Anyway, with that kind of a health regime, I managed to graduate, and then I came back to LA and decided what I wanted to do with the rest of my life. Discovered that 4 years of graduate school had produced irreparable brain damage. And I'd become totally institutionalized, and so unfit to go back in the industry. I'm just trapped in academia. So instead of going back to industry, which had been my original plan, I stayed in academia and became a professor. Okay, now, here we are again. I've made a major achievement. I've gotten a PhD. Then I've become a professor at a major university. Now, surely, with all those achievements, I should be content, right? Wrong. When not drinking and not working and not some other activity, restless, irritable, discontent, and this big craving. So I decided to spice up my life a little bit, and I got into an affair with a married woman and chased her all the way to Colorado. Created a lot of adventure with that. Came back to, that fell apart. I came back to LA. I was living in an apartment in Westwood and set that on fire in a blackout. The manager came around and evicted me from the apartment for being a fire hazard. And that's how come I moved back to Playa del Rey. Not that I thought I'd rather burn down Playa del Rey than Westwood. But I remembered back there in '59 living on Trolley, and then it seemed to me like that was fun. You know, I thought, well, I think I was happier in Playa del Rey. Let's go. So it's kind of a reverse geography. I'm trying to go back and figure out where was I reasonably happy. Let's go back there. You know, so now I started playing geographics. So I moved back down here. But it wasn't working. And because now I couldn't really drink comfortably because I was afraid I'm going to set this place on fire. So if I didn't drink, I couldn't sleep because I was starting to have panic attacks. I was filled with anxiety, and I'd just sit there and think about all the things that were going wrong and all the things that hadn't gone wrong yet that were bound to go wrong pretty soon. And I couldn't get to sleep unless I drank. And if I started to drink, then I'd say, oh, I'm going to lose control, and I'm going to set this place on fire, and I'll get evicted from here, and then so I'm really stuck. And eventually, after a couple of months of that, I just gave up. When I had been evicted from the other apartment, the manager had suggested Alcoholics Anonymous, and I was very insulted. But I decided to give up and turn myself in. And so I did that. And went down to 26th and Broadway in 1968, and I said, I just walked in at 10 o'clock one morning. I walked in, and all I said was, I need help. And that was all I had to say. And somebody there who'd been sober for a while took me in, sat me down at the table, gave me a cup of coffee, and then he started to describe to me how I felt. And that blew me away. Because I had been running around looking for other places to help. I'd been in some encounter groups and some group therapy and some one-on-one psychiatry. And in all of those situations, I would keep trying to explain to them what seemed to be wrong with my life and how I felt. And I had a lot of trouble putting words on the feelings. I couldn't get them to understand what was wrong. I go into 26th and Broadway, and I don't even have to explain. He's describing to me how I felt. I thought, this is wonderful. Well, see, he had the magic. One drunk talking to another. He had earned the ability to do that same way you have, same way I have, by living it. And he was just sharing how any newcomer feels, that's all. He knew how I felt because he'd been there. And that's the power we all have. And that's why I don't want to turn my back on the past. That's why I don't need to bury it, because it changes from a liability into an asset, because I can use it to help another struggling, suffering alcoholic. So he talked to me for about an hour, and then he turned me loose. I couldn't believe it. He's just going to let me go out in the street. And he said, there's a meeting here every night at 8:30. He says, come back at 8:30. Well, I thought that that was the only place in all of Los Angeles where there were meetings. And so I just kept coming back to 26th and Broadway. After 2 or 3 nights, however, it turned out that there was a Pacific group meeting there. And there was a guy there that I used to drink with. This guy's name was Don, and he said, oh, am I glad to see you. We've got a seat with your name on it right here. I've been waiting for you to come in. And he started taking me around the meetings. And he just kind of took me in tow and took me around the meetings for about a month until I picked out a sponsor, somebody that wanted to sponsor me. And I started my career in Alcoholics Anonymous. I didn't stay sober from the first meeting either. I had to go out and do a little research on my own. Eventually got sober, October '68. After about a year, living in Playa del Rey, I felt like I had the best of both worlds, because I could go up to West LA and see how they were doing it, and then I could go down to Manhattan Beach and see how they were doing it. And after about a year, 2 years, I decided I liked Manhattan Beach better, so I left the Pacific group, and they had a spiritual group down Manhattan Beach. Not there anymore, but, or maybe, I don't know, looking at meeting guide, on Thursday nights, they call it 11th step meeting. And that's really helpful in getting me started in the spiritual part of the program. And that's become a major building block in my sobriety. So I figure I got, again, Playa del Rey, the best of both worlds. The Pacific group is good basic training. It's like Marine boot camp. You learn a lot of things, like hold out your hand, you know, and show up and take commitments. And I still do those. I'm a GSR for a meeting in Pacific Palisades. I've been secretary of different meetings and treasurer, and I'm a coffee maker and this and that. I still go to 4 or 5 meetings a week. But I still treasure the stuff I learned from that spiritual group in Manhattan Beach, because that's what really launched me off on the spiritual path. So I'm just a very grateful alcoholic, and thank you for having me here to share tonight.
Sorry to interrupt your viewing. Taper Dave here. Just wanted to take a second to ask you to like and subscribe to my channel. Let me know if you like what you're listening. I've got some very good talks here, and this one's a great one. Just curious, do you think this is better than Zoom? Tell me what you think. Okay, this is how I prepare my drone for launching. I like to do it inside the cab of my truck so I'm not standing outside in the weather. To install the joysticks for control, up and down, right and left, powered on. I have an Android phone that I use to connect it to the drone with. And it's actually controlled through the iPhone, through an app. Oops, wrong way. It's actually controlled through the iPhone, or through this Android phone, through the app. It's actually controlled through the Android phone, through an app, and you connect it through this short connection right here.
Remote control connected.
Remote control's connected. So I pull out the drone. I have to extend the legs. Long legs extended first, then the short legs. Remove the gimbal protector. Set that aside, then power it on one short burst, then one long burst. I lay it down. So I have to go to calibrate. So the drone's not connected yet. It shows you here as this drone gets disconnected, even though the remote's powered on. So the drone has to establish it's connected. So I go into the app to calibration mode. First I'll calibrate the remote controller. Start calibration. Out, in, oop, out, in, up, down, and then this little wheel is to control the gimbal. So it's calibrated. Go to gimbal calibration, start calibration, and then it calibrates the gimbal. I don't know if that shows up. The gimbal's moving all over the place. Changes, you can see it on the video. And I'm calibrated to take off. It's acquired 7 satellites at the moment. There are 26 satellites up in the sky, which it has to acquire before you can take off. So it's connected. It's got enough satellites. This is white. I can go to press this little arrow button, swipe right to take off, and it would start the motors if I slid this to the right, but I'll wait till I get outside. Don't want to do it inside.